Hello and welcome to Toyer Talk. Today's topic is zoning for small businesses. David, why is zoning an important topic for small businesses?
Zoning is basically the local regulations that establish what you can build in an area as well as how you can use the buildings in an area. So as a small business, it's really important to understand whether or not your business would be allowed in a particular zone and what types of standards would apply. For example, basic example, if you're an industrial development, industrial project, maybe a manufacturer, you wouldn't be allowed to build in a residential zone. And likewise, if you wanted to build a house, jurisdictions aren't going to allow you to go build it where there's a lot of manufacturing in an industrial zone. That's really a simple explanation, but there's more complex examples as well.
So tell me about some of the more complicated factors.
So some of the more complicating factors is, let's say you start a consulting business out of your house. More than likely you're going to comply with the local zoning code and be considered a home occupation. But as your business may grow, you choose to hire a couple of people to help you out. And those folks are not family and they don't live on the location where you have your business. At that point, you'll probably exceed the standards that are allowed for a home occupation and you're no longer in compliance with the zoning code. Or let's say that you decide to start a landscaping business and you work out of a detached garage in the rear of, rear yard of your house. And you occasionally will store your trailer there. Sometimes you'll store landscaping blocks and other things that you're using on projects. You might store your mowers in your yard. At that point, you're probably going to be considered a landscaping contractor and not a home occupation. And so landscaping contractors may or may not be permitted in the zone that you're in.
So what happens if you're not in the right zone or you don't meet the standards for that use in that zone?
More than likely nothing happens, at least right away. But it may be a few months down the road or a few years down the road, a neighbor might complain because you're making too much noise at 5 o'clock in the morning when you're about to head out to start your landscaping day. And the local jurisdiction then visits your property and they look around and they go, wait, this guy's running a landscaping contracting business out of his backyard. And at that point, they'll determine you're not in compliance and they'll probably issue something called a notice of violation, or some communities call it other things. And you'll be told, hey, you either need to come in compliance with the code or you have to shut down your business.
Is there a way to fix that?
Yeah, sometimes we can work with the community and the business to find a solution to essentially get the right permits after the fact and come in compliance with the standards. But that can be an expensive endeavor, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. And so for a small business, it's better to comply ahead of time as opposed to face the potential penalties or corrections later on.
So how do you make sure if you open your business in a house or even in a different location that you can comply with local zoning and standards?
The easiest way to do that would be to go to the local jurisdiction and talk to somebody in the planning department about what you intend to do. And they should be able to give you some pretty good advice. We suggest in many cases that somebody do that in exchange of writing back and forth, so there is some written record to that effect. Because in the future, if they were to change the zoning, you may need to prove that you were compliant with the zone as it existed at the time that you started doing what you were doing. And so those can be some critical issues. The other way to get assistance ahead of time would be to talk with your attorney that's helping you set up your business, especially if you're getting incorporated or having to comply with some state licensing. Your attorney can often help you take a look at the zoning code. However, if they don't have land use experience or some real estate law experience, they may or may not be able to give you a really full analysis of what you can and can't do. So really your best option would be to hire a consulting firm, and that could be somebody like us, or it could be a civil design or engineering firm that does other types of land use consulting. But we can take a look at the codes and standards. In our particular case, our company can provide a client what we call a zoning letter of opinion, which really just simply is a letter advising what you can and can't do in your particular zone.
Can you help somebody that already started their business and is now in violation or facing a notice of a violation from the community?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there are some cases when we can help a company get in compliance with the code. However, there's also some cases where there isn't an ability to come into compliance with the code. Simply, it's just too divergent from the standards allowed to be able to bring it into compliance. Or let's say the standards to comply would essentially take away, the majority of what you do business-wise, and you'd no longer be able to operate your business and make a profit. So in those cases, what we can really do is help a company take a look at locations where they could move their business and then be in compliance with the standards of that local jurisdiction.
Thanks so much for answering my questions, David. Remember, if you have a question for Toyer, you can tweet it to #ToyerTalk, post it on our Facebook page, or send us an email. Join us soon for another Toyer Talk.